All right, what's going on, guys? We are here for All in ACL graduate interview number 11 with All in ACL graduate Allison Gately. We are going to get her in here. Give me just a few minutes to get her on here. All right. Send this to Allison right now. Okay. And forgive me if you've joined. We're just waiting to get this started here. All right. There we go. All right, Allison, how are we?
Good, how are you?
Good. I am very glad that this worked and we did not have an issue. For those who don't know, Alice and I tried to do this a couple weeks ago. We ran into a couple issues. Fortunately, we were able to get it going this time. I think there were issues on my end, so I'm glad we got it figured out.
Yeah.
This is our 11th graduate interview. We'll keep doing these every Monday. For those who don't know, we've been doing them Mondays at 4:30. Maybe not every Monday in the summer, but trying to get most of them done. Allison has one of the most unique stories around, so I'm excited for her to share her story with you. I will do a little bit of an introduction for you, but I don't think anyone can tell your story as good as you have. So, yeah, Allison has had, and I'm going to refer to my list here because I wrote it down. Allison had 4 surgeries over 12 years before starting with us. She had an ACL reconstruction in 2007, a microfracture in 2008, a scope in 2011, and then in 2022. And she's an absolute beast, CrossFit athlete, Hyrox competitor, just a high-level fitness athlete. Even though she may, maybe humble, she basically ground through competitions, high-level fitness, high-level weight training for years, just kind of pushing through. And she was able to do incredible things, move incredible amounts of weight. But knee never felt right, and those surgeries kept piling up until she finally got a scope in 2022, was kind of on the same path to do the same thing with traditional rehab, and then started with us. So that's what we're here to talk about today. So I'll let you give kind of your background and introduction, just who you are, where you're from, what you do, life with this knee, and yeah, just a little bit about yourself, and then kind of how you started getting up to starting with us.
Yeah, so I am Allison. I'm 34. I live just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. Married, mom of 2, have 3 kids, the whole shebang. But I grew up sorry, I'm going to get notifications that my daughter's waking up. I grew up playing soccer competitively, and in high school, my junior year of high school, tore my ACL during preseason for my high school team, and ended up getting an ACL reconstruction, going through the whole rehab thing. That was a great surgery. It's like that rehab process worked really well. I came back to soccer stronger than I had felt before, but ended up re-injuring myself in my senior year of soccer. And that's kind of when things went downhill in terms of my knee. So I had a microfracture surgery then. Um, which I guess for folks who don't know is like they go in and drill holes in the bone, and it's supposed to help kind of mimic cartilage growth, because that was a big issue for me. I didn't have a lot of cartilage in my knee. And after that surgery, it really didn't feel like things went well in terms of rehab. I was non-weight bearing on that leg for like 6 weeks, but did 0 rehab post surgery up until I hit 6 weeks. So lots of atrophy, atrophy, lots of strength loss. And then it just didn't feel like anything was taken super seriously. So kind of from then on, I had a lot of problems with my knee. Tried to play soccer again, couldn't do it. Would just like swell up and couldn't walk afterwards. And then kind of just had to figure out how to work out and do things with my knee. Um, without it blowing up. So kind of led me to strength training and CrossFit and that type of thing. Cause really the big issue for me at that point was agility. Had a scope a couple of years after that microfracture just to clean things up because it was still bugging me a little bit. And then kind of spent the next like 8 or 9 years just working out, doing CrossFit. And if it flared up, that was just kind of what it was. I had doctors basically tell me, like, this is your knee. It's going to be like this until you have a replacement. And you kind of just have to live with it. So did that for a while and then ended up in 2021 going for a walk with my dog. He jumped, fell back into my knee, and it just, I don't even fully understand what happened, but it just blew up. Couldn't walk, lots of pain. Ended up having floated cartilage that needed to be removed. And went to the rehab. Didn't love it. Didn't feel great about it. And came across Tommy on Instagram and ended up doing that. And yeah, that's how I'm here now. It's a
Yeah.
long story. Feels like I'm blabbing and blabbing, but like, good Lord, it's
That's
been 14 years.
Yeah, you've got a story to tell, and that has a long time. And honestly, that was pretty succinct for all that you packed in there. Um, Talk a little bit about, because I actually feel like I remember a lot, and I remember a lot about our clients, but I can like remember our first conversation like it was yesterday. I
Mhm.
remember you being like, I know I need to do this, but I don't want to. Being like, can I have a couple days to think about it? And me being like, I never am like, yeah, you have to make a decision today if you want to move forward. But I remember being like, I feel like if you take a couple days, you're just gonna go back to be like, I want to do what I want to do, instead of, and I feel like you don't need that. And
Mhm.
talk a little bit about what were some of your biggest hesitations before you started with us.
I think there were two main ones, I guess. One was, I mean, I came across you on Instagram, and still, even in this time of life where, social media is such a big thing and businesses are on social media quite a bit, it just, for me being the millennial that I am, like that felt really weird to me.
Yeah.
And so that was a hesitation, I think.
Yeah.
And then the other hesitation was just cost. I just had a kid. And so finances were, a little tight. And I was just like, I don't know, it's a lot of money to like agree to put forth and have that conversation with my husband. It felt, being a new mom, being really postpartum, like close postpartum, felt very selfish to do. So those were my two big hesitations.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate that transparency, Reddit, and I think that's probably what most people feel when they start with us.
Mhm.
You're used to having surgery and thinking insurance, right? People think like this is, why is what I'm doing with insurance not enough? Why would I go for something extra? Why would I do something additionally?
Yeah.
And then, secondarily, when you first started with us, especially, we didn't have the number of testimonials and stories and interviews like this that we do now.
Mhm.
Even now, today, it's like Instagram's weird. The internet's a weird place. I'm not meeting you in person. I'm not. It's online.
Yeah.
I think I understand that difference, and we've grown so much because people like you share their stories, and I think that's one of the really helpful things. Talk a little bit about if those were your hesitations. What attracted you to this, and what made you feel like this would be a good fit for you?
Um, it felt like, I think I really appreciated the strength base of it. That was one thing I really felt like in-person insurance-based PT I wasn't getting was, I was wanting to get back into my weightlifting. I needed to have a certain level of strength and like foundational strength in order to do that. And I was just like, there's no way little 10-pound ankle weights of leg extensions is gonna like get me anywhere. Like there's just that's not gonna happen. And so when I saw that you really focused on strength-based training and like not just those manual tests of strength that they do in traditional PT, but on actual, we're testing your strength now and we're testing it later and we're seeing the improvement. We're testing your good side to your bad side and seeing that, um, ratio of strength or whatever the term is. And that really, uh, I think enticed me because that felt very evidence based, very data driven, and I appreciate that. And then also, like, just seeing that you didn't shy away from some of the movements that traditional PT is like, never do a leg extension. You can never do that. And I hate that type of all or nothing approach. Like, you can never do this. Well, you can if you're smart about it and, progressive about it. So those were, I think, the two big things that I was like, I think this is what I need. I need that strength focus.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for those who don't know, and I think your situation, and I'll use the word CrossFit here, but I know for you it was, a lot of it was those kind of HIIT style workouts and CrossFit
Mm,
style workouts. But I think CrossFit is, I feel like, what everyone knows. But to me, it goes towards barbell lifting, Olympic lifting,
mm,
fit, HIIT training, any type of more functional barbell based movement, right? I think the understanding of how you need to bridge the gap to that is often lacking in traditional PT settings. And I think on the flip side, sometimes in those settings or in more of a functional strength training focus, they can skip the early parts, right?
mm,
I think that's one of the things that we really talked about was your experience with traditional PT was exactly that of like, okay, you're going to go until you get to a certain point, and then it's like, okay, you're done with the rehab part, go do your strength training thing. And that left you trying to, front squat, barbell front squat, deadlift, do burpees with, massive quad deficit that as an athlete, someone who's strong, you'd figure out how to do it. But your knee didn't like it. And you would talk to it. And talk a little bit about, because I think sometimes people think if there was a problem, they would not be able to push through. They would not be able to do those things. And I think you're a great example of someone who you were able to do a lot of things and able to do a lot of them for, like you said, 12, 14 years, a long time. But it would catch up to you over time.
mm.
Talk a little bit about kind of what you were able to do, the type of weights you were moving over time before you ended up before that last injury and before that last rehab with us.
Yeah. So I guess oh, it's been a couple years, but in terms of lifting, Um, I was doing like, I mean, a max squat of like 265, max snatch of 170, power clean or clean of like 200. And so those were like my max effort weights. So I was, moving often, anywhere from 70 to 90% of those weights,
Mhm.
pretty frequently. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah.
and then talk a little bit about I think what you felt in kind of the gap of was it with what you were doing with traditional PT? Did you feel like they were like, okay, you're done with us, you're good to go back to CrossFit and lifting those type of weights, or was it, hey, just don't do those things?
It was literally like all of a sudden they were like, "Yep, you're good. You can go off and go back and do these things." And I knew that was probably going to happen because in the beginning of that PT, I was like, these are my goals. This is what I want to do. I want to get back to snatching. And they were like, "Well, what's a snatch?" And I was like, "Okay, maybe not the right audience. Maybe not the right place for me." But I knew that was going to happen. And it was even like, even just getting back to running, I think I maybe did 30 seconds on a treadmill with them. And they were like, "Cool, you're good." And I was like, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Um, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things we've seen. And your example, right, of okay, you had a scope, right, and that was
Mhm.
sent to remove some scar tissue, clean it up, maybe clean up your meniscus, low level surgery or quote unquote low level surgery, right?
Mhm.
And the protocol for that and the rehab for that is going to be very basic, right? Because there's no precautions really other than the immediate healing from surgery. there's not anything like an ACL where they're saying biologically this needs to heal and we need to protect it. However, knowing what you'd been through, right, with multiple surgeries over years, right, and you feeling like your knee was not 100% for a majority of that time, right? I know basically you said that first ACL surgery, you felt like you came back soccer, felt good, but after that, from 2008 onward, feeling like that knee was not the same. There was a level of compensation that was going on for you to be able to do those things. Talk a little bit about what you felt in those intervening years from, let's say, 2008 to 2021, where you were moving some serious weight, like you talked about, working out regularly, but still not playing soccer because you didn't feel comfortable cutting and pivoting. Talk a little bit about what you felt in terms of I'm able to do these things, but maybe I don't feel fully confident in this knee.
Yeah, it was interesting because my knee would go through phases. So I would have months where everything felt great. I could run, I could jump, I could squat, I could do all of the things, and my knee felt fine. Like it felt almost normal. Um, let me caveat that and say normal to me. Like I haven't had full mobility in my knee, like in terms of flexion since 2008. Um, I've always had a little bit of swelling in my knee. So normal includes those things. But it felt about what I would consider normal. But then randomly, all of a sudden, my knee would swell, my knee would hurt, I'd ache, in the middle of the night, not be able to sleep. And it never, like, there was never any real reason behind it that I could find. It wasn't like, oh, I did this movement and this happened. It was just like, whoop, you're doing too much, or it's time for us to hurt. I don't know. I don't really know what the reason was, but it would go through those phases of feeling really good and then hurting. And I'd have to take a step back of either, okay, maybe I'm not going to squat for a week. How about I'm not going to run for the week, or I'm just not going to work out at all. And take it easy for a week, and then I'll come back and it'll be okay. And it would just like that cycle of good, bad, good, bad. And that was very annoying.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly what I remember from our
Yeah.
conversation. Like you felt like you were about to get back on that merry-go-round.
Yes, 100%.
And that's where you were like, okay, this is where I'm at. And it was kind of like a fork in the road moment of,
Oh, I just lost your sound. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. That's weird. There, I think it's,
yes, yes, no?
yeah, there you go.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
Um, we were saying you were at kind of a fork in the road moment where it was like, do I want to get back on that merry-go-round? And very motivated, very dedicated, very strong person. You can probably would have continued doing CrossFit, would have gone back to moving those weights, or do I want to do something different? Talk about for you what made that decision for you. What made you say, you know what, I want to go down this path, and what would you say were some of the most surprising things to you when you started with us?
I think the really big thing that I was like, no, I need to do this is having had a kid. I was like, I want to be able to do this long term for my health. I want my kid to see me do this long term for health. And I want to be able to do these things with my kid as they get older. I want to kick a ball around with them and not have to worry about it, run around the park with them and not have to worry, oh, is my knee going to give out right now? And so that was a big factor of like, I want longevity so that I can be active with my kids as they grow up. And I, like you said, like I knew I was about to be on that merry-go-round again, and potentially even worse. That I think it would have been a significantly worse merry-go-round that would have probably ended up with me getting hurt again, and needing something again. So yeah, really that big push was I have a baby. I want to move with them. I don't want to have to sit out and be like, sorry, mom's knee hurts today.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
So I love that you said that, and I love that you kind of really put both sides of it in terms of like, as a mom, you hesitated in signing up with us because it was an out-of-pocket expense.
Mhm.
You felt selfish, but then on the flip side, you almost feel like that was the driving force
Yeah.
to signing up and doing that for you. And I think that's something that we, for those who may not follow us or may not see, we have a bunch of highlights of people who fit different ALN ACLers who fit different categories who work with us, and one of them is parents, right?
Mhm.
And in that parent category, almost everyone talks exactly like you did, where it's like, you know, uh, investing in something out of pocket for my knee, it feels like I shouldn't be doing this for me. I could, do that for my child. Um, and what that always kind of comes down to is there's nothing you can give your kid, your son or daughter, more than
It's me. Oh, there we go. There we go.
um, what that always comes down to is there's nothing you could give your kid more that's going to be of more value to them than a mom that's able to, kick soccer ball with them, that's able to work out with them, that's able to model for them fitness and health for the next 10, 15, 20, 25, and so on years.
Yeah.
And I think that's a paradigm shift that a lot of moms kind of your ilk who are active and want to continue to model that for their kids really value.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, and it's, I think around that time as well, I was getting hit hard with the like, a child's health is like directly linked to a mom's activity levels. And the thought of my child's health declining because I can't be active was just like something I wasn't able to live with. So yeah, the drive to be healthy for my kids for sure. Big reason.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I remember there's a statistic that it's the number one predictor of
Mhm.
a child who grows up to have a regular fitness routine as a parent who had a regular fitness routine.
Yeah,
And that's like you can, it's probably really like anything else in parenting that's like, you don't want to fall into do as I say, not as I do.
exactly.
And it's really, what they see is modeled. It just becomes, what they do. And I think that's a really valuable thing to remember. And something that I think is one of the reasons that people want to stay healthy. And I think in a way that almost helped you too of you thought more from a long term than a short term. And I think that's you can do anything really short term. You can push past any pain. You can, get to any weight, figure out a way to lift any weight, but it's how it, adds up over years.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what in starting with us surprised you the most. You talked about what interests you, what were some of your hesitations, but what did you feel like the way this model, what was most surprising to you that people might not realize from the outside?
How hard the workouts were. I think that really surprised me. Not that I've ever thought physical therapy is easy, but I remember having, I got a gym membership so I could use the equipment and going to the gym, and at the end of it being like, oh my God, like what? I'm so tired.
Yeah.
So I think that was like the initial like, holy crap. Um, what else surprised me? Um, I don't know. I think really like I said before, like you're very strength driven and like data driven. But I think the commitment to that really like how I had to track, this leg versus this leg and do the percentages and all of that. I was really like, oh wow, like he's not just talking the talk, he's walking the walk. Like this is something we're going to continually refer back to, which I loved, but I was uh in a good way surprised to see that that was actually like
Yeah.
genuinely the data that was collected. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I think you hit on two things that I think are really important for on the one sense, right? And what I always tell people in what we do is like, I'm not, our program is temporary, right? I have
Mhm.
no bones about that. This is, people stay with us for 15 years, right? We're not trying to create lifetime clients. We're trying to create six short-term, medium-term success stories that
Mhm.
go on and tell other people about this. We don't want you to be our client for 5 years, right? And that being said, is that's a level of less fun fitness, right? Like you've talked about that. Fitness, and you want to work out. Obviously, you're someone who enjoys working out, right? Even
Mhm.
workouts, right? And for a lot of people who do work out or into fitness or into hiking or running or sports, that becomes their not escape, but their solace, right? Something you return to every day that you enjoy. And it can be hard to focus on what the problem is. And I think for you, especially, well, hey, you're a good athlete, you have an experienced lifter, you could figure out a way to do a lot of those different lifts and progress weight and see the weights go up, but you might pay for it down the road. Versus us saying, like, hey, we're going to test your strength. We're going to say, this is the problem. We're going to identify that problem. And then we're going to build workouts that really focus on that problem, focus on where that's weak. And that can be mentally draining, and that can
Mhm.
be, and then obviously physically draining too. And I know that was a hard thing for you and a lot of people to
Yeah.
kind of focus on that problem. Talk a little bit about just what that experience was like, and going to kind of a traditional gym and focusing more on kind of taking steps back and not doing some of the lifts you love for a time period, but then building them back in, and how you felt, what the difference you felt with them was.
Yeah, I think maybe that add this to my hesitation list was having to take another step back. Um, because I remember feeling very strongly of like I got pregnant and I had to slowly ramp back, and then I was postpartum and I had to slowly ramp up, but I had to be really careful, and now I've been injured and I've had to fully step back. Then I had surgery, and then I had to slowly build, and now I'm having to step back again. And I was like, I'm so sick of this. I don't want to do it again. Um, and so that was definitely a hesitation that is just coming to my mind now. But yeah, mentally, that's really hard to have to step back and go to the foundations of like really basic strength work and doing that continually, and also hard mentally to see like, holy crap, there's such a discrepancy between my two sides of what is strong and what is I'm building the strength. And that's hard. And to like go in some days and be like, I'm going to hit these numbers, I'm going to feel good. And you don't. And you're like, well, shit. Can I curse on Instagram? I don't know.
You can, yeah.
Um, that was really mentally hard. And I remember really appreciating you in those moments because you kind of like have a sense of when that's happening, like when that mental shift is coming, of when somebody's going to start struggling. And I remember you saying something to me. I don't remember exactly what you said. I just remember like I was mentally feeling that toughness and I didn't say anything to you, but you somehow knew and were like, hey,
Mhm.
um, and just like a reminder of like what we're doing and why we're doing it, and we're going to get there. So I
Yeah.
remember really appreciating that in that moment of like, oh, he gets it. He
Yeah.
doesn't get the physical part of it, he gets the mental part of it. And you like just knew that I was getting into that space where it was getting difficult.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that it sounds like such a simple thing of like, even if you know you're on the right path, but
Hmm.
it can be hard to like, I mean, we are essentially saying this is where you're weak and asking you to do things that are kind of rubbing your nose in it, like day after day after day. It's mentally draining. And obviously you said basic, and I think there's a distinction of, they're not complex lifts, like
Right.
not complex Olympic lifts. They are more basic, more foundational, but they're also not basic to the level of band walks and bridges and climb.
Right.
And that's that middle ground that we need to build that up. Get, that middle ground of going from point A, instead of point A to point, Z. We need to work through that. And I think that was still, as you said earlier, very difficult, very heavy, progressive
Mhm.
load. And I wrote the numbers down here where your first test when you were done with PT, you started with us and we tested you, and it was a 35% quad deficit, which is massive, right? And that's just a level of discrepancy that it would just continue to irritate you if you put that level of weight through your knee,
Yeah.
try to progress through that. And I think that is likely what had happened in previous surgeries in previous areas that led to, long-term detriment. Um, in 6 months, we more than doubled that, and more than doubled the strength of your initial non-surgical side, which was just a ton of improvement, and I think left you in a different place. Talk a little bit about, because now you worked with us, I'd even have to think about it, but probably 3 years ago, maybe two.
Three. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it
Yeah.
was. Yeah, talk a little bit about now how in finishing with us the differences you feel in terms of kind of being off that merry-go-round and what you're able to do and what you're doing now.
Yeah. Well, my knee doesn't flare up really. I think I've had one flare up, and that was my own doing. I can wholeheartedly blame myself for that one. Um, but yeah, I mean, my knees felt great. I haven't thought about it nearly as much. It's not in the back of my mind when I'm doing things. Um, My workouts have shifted slightly just because I'm in another postpartum phase and certain things are feeling good on my whole body and other things aren't. So fitness looks a little bit different now. But my knee feels great. And I think one of the things, like if I had advice to give to anybody that works with you, is to like take note of the exercises. Because like you said, you don't want clients for life. You want temporary clients, get them better and have them move on with their life. But when you have knee injuries and multiple of them, it is kind of a lifelong process to keeping it strong and healthy. And one of the things that I think I've done that I would recommend to anybody is to take note of the exercises and build that into your fitness routinely for the rest of your fitness life, right? So, like, I have specific exercises I'm doing on a weekly basis just to maintain my knee. And I can tell when I stop doing those or I don't do them, my knee starts to bother me. And once I start building those things back in, my knee feels great again. And so, doing that, building that knowledge base of exercises that, I know are building my quad, helping with my calf, helping my hamstrings, all of the kind of surrounding muscles. Um, Building that knowledge, I think, was like invaluable through that experience.
Yeah. No, that's such a great point, and I think that is so key to like what we make sure everyone when they finish with us has what we give now as a maintenance program. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that really important to understand of like, and that maintenance program may be, some level of different, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's where, one thing that I want to touch on too is no doubt, right? You've talked about your history and all that you've been through and having that microfracture procedure. And for those who don't know, as you mentioned, that microfracture procedure is something that has really fallen out of favor and is done less and less now. But it's something that was more common back then. And it's for, to essentially help regrow healthy cartilage is the idea behind it. And how well it works can be debated, but that's a level of cartilage damage that you had that is being managed, right? And so that's part of why maintenance is even extremely more important for you. But we always tell people that some level of maintenance is really helpful
Mm-hmm.
for the rest of your life. And I think the key that we really try to harp on, and you can probably testify to this as well, is that we want you to do this and do this right so that when you're done with it, you're done with it and you can move into a maintenance phase. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
the level that we asked of you when you were working with us, but you have to get to that level and then you can kind of maintain it. And that bar for maintenance is much easier, but you obviously do these workouts so that you can get to a place where you're able to do what you want to do. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's, one of the things that in addition to being able to maintain that, you've also been able to feel much better with lifting the way you want to lift, even if obviously, as you said, that's going through now having another baby, that's been affected by that.
Yeah. Yeah. And oh, I just had a thought that completely left my mind.
That's okay. That's okay. Come back. Um, Talk about this. What would you say, if you had any advice for forget about people who are working with us, but just ACLers in general? What would be your biggest advice for people who've had knee surgery, as someone who's now had, 4 knee surgeries?
Oh, um, listen to your body. Don't ignore the signs. If something hurts, it usually means something's wrong. I think, yeah, I've had a lot of years of just kind of, if I just ignore it, it'll go away. I think that's my husband's mantra, by the way, not with his knee, but with other parts, the shoulder and stuff. Yeah, if it hurts, listen to it. And if it continues to hurt, you probably need to do something.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point too of that distinction, right? Because I think sometimes this is not your type, right? This is not probably the way your brain is wired. But some people can feel like they get focused on what, if it hurts today, is that a problem? But I think what you said about it persists. And I
Yeah.
think that's really a key that, because that's a determining thing. Like, listen, you're going to have aches and pains if you want to work out and you want to work out over a long period of time. But if you find yourself worsening, that's really something to listen to. And I think those were periods you went through where you would get caught up in kind of that day's lift, that day's workout, that day's activity, but then it would set you back. And it becomes this, we called it a merry-go-round, but you could also call it a roller coaster, where the number one driver of success is going to be consistency and volume
Hmm.
across the week. But if you overdo it and then have to take, days and months and weeks off, or even just days, right, then those weeks don't add up the way you want them to. And I think that's a really critical point of, listen to that response and listen to how you respond over, the next couple days. The other thing I'll say about, kind of, you said, trust your instinct or listen to yourself, is I think a lot of people talk about confidence, right? Talk
Hmm.
a bit about how you felt with, because obviously you're doing a lot of things and no one would look at you and say, you're not strong, right? But when we tested, it was like there's a substantial deficit there. Talk
Yeah.
a little bit about how that made you feel from kind of a confidence perspective, because I think that's one thing that people go through a lot, where they're like, you should be able to do this, right? You should be good, and I think that's how you were made to feel with like you're done, you're good to go, you should be able to do whatever you want, but you weren't, didn't have the strength that you needed at that time.
Yeah. Sorry, my son just walked in. You might see him.
That's okay.
Um, yeah, I think. Do you want to say hi real quick?
Yeah, it's a family friendly program.
Oh.
How's it going, bud?
Can
I did.
you go play? Well, you need to sit quietly then, okay? Can you do that? Okay. Yeah, I mean, confidence wise, I think when I started with you, my confidence was like zero in my knee. I knew just trying to, like you said, like front squat, back squat, do like a barbell snatch. I was like, this is not good, and I am not in a good place. Um, and I think initially, even just getting on like a leg extension machine, like I was nervous about it because I've been so programmed by previous physical therapy to be like, nope, don't do that. That's really bad for your knee. When that's just not truly the case. Um, and so, yeah, confidence level was like negative, I think, when
Yeah,
we started. But seeing even, in any fitness regimen that you do, there's going to be ups and downs. You're going to increase and you're going to decrease, or you're going to have ebbs and flows, but seeing a consistent increase, just like a trend line upward of strength, like seeing that and being like, oh, I'm getting closer to my strong side. That gap is narrowing. That was a huge boost in confidence. And just like I remember one huge boost in confidence for me was, I remember it very clearly, when you programmed like single leg squats or pistol squats,
mhm.
which I would call them. And I did one and I was like, holy crap. I
Yeah,
never thought I would do one of those again, ever.
yeah,
And I just did like 10 and it felt great. Like my knee
yeah,
didn't hurt. I didn't have to wear lifters. I didn't have to put a sleeve on my knee. Everything felt good. And that was a massive boost in confidence. So having those little wins, he's okay. He's okay. Having those little boosts of confidence, were like amazing.
yeah,
And at the end of it, like you said, like we narrowed that gap. I felt really good. Testing out some of the lifts with you, adding running back into my routine, just felt really, really good. And like the ultimate confidence is like not even thinking about it. So not having my knee on my mind all the time. Um, and that's kind of the place we got to, was where I
yeah.
didn't have to think about it when I walked up and downstairs, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, and I think that's so important. And you brought it back to, I love the way you described it, because I think that's what we talk to so many people who will say, I'm working on my confidence in in-person PT.
You gotta be quiet, baby.
I'm
Sorry.
working on my confidence, or like, I just don't have confidence yet. And when I ask if they've had a strength test, they say no. And I always say, confidence is a very real thing. There's no doubt about that. But it's become this buzzword in ACL rehab where people are being told they need to work on their confidence, when it's like, you didn't have a confidence issue, you had a strength issue, and you had a brain that was accurately telling you you weren't strong enough to do front squatting, back squatting. You weren't strong enough for single leg squatting yet. So understanding the process and seeing that growth and seeing that improvement, that's going to grow your confidence. But then, yes, you still have to prove to yourself that you use that strength to single leg squat. And I think that's really important too. Then building on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, um, one of the last things that I want to get to is talk about just your experience of I think for some people it can be like, how soon do I start this? Talk about as someone who started a little bit later out post-op and then after multiple surgeries, about do you feel like, hey, that was the right time for you? Do you wish you had the opportunity to start earlier? Talk a little bit about that.
I wish I had started earlier. um, I think mostly because I'm impatient and it would have meant less physical therapy,
Yeah,
less time with physical therapy. But I think the earlier you start, the better. In those first months after surgery or first weeks or anything, I mean, if you're not doing the right things, you're not going to be building the right strength that you need. And like with that microfracture, I didn't do physical therapy for the first 6 weeks post-op. Like I lost so much strength and so much mobility because of that. And so your programming isn't just about doing strength building exercises, but I've seen with your ACLers in the early weeks post op, you're doing, mobility work and trying to get flexion and extension back, and even just like learning how to walk again and that kind of thing. Like, there's, you should start as early as you can, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, and I think that's a really helpful point that I think so many people don't recognize. I think the pattern you'd fallen into with traditional PT and then your own thing was underloaded really early on. Exactly like
Mhm.
you said. Bridges, clamshells, leg lifts, band walks, focus on range of motion. Typical things, and then reaching a certain point where you got rapidly overloaded. And I
Yeah.
think many times that was here's the protocol, you can run, you can jump. And other times it was like, okay, you're done with PT, go do your thing. And now you're front squatting and deadlifting and snatching and hand cleaning. And that level of not having that intelligently programmed all the way through, I think makes a big difference. And we're really grateful. We have a lot more people who start with us in the early phases now from learning about your experience and people's experience like you. And I think that's a really, really helpful thing.
Yeah, definitely the earlier, the better. And I think one of the things that I've always like now having gone through all of this, I think we talked about this like also and when we worked together is hindsight's always 2020, and I didn't know what I didn't know back then. And I wish after that microfracture I had advocated for myself to start immediately with physical therapy. I wish after my first scope that I had advocated to even just have physical therapy. They didn't prescribe physical therapy after my first scope, so I did
Yeah.
zero after that. So yeah, I think doing the right work early, it is a huge game changer.
Yeah. And you touched on something that I think is really important of, you know, in a sense, probably why wasn't physical therapy prescribed for what they may have been trying to do was save you insurance visits, right? And saying, hey, we'll start those later on. This is going to be long recovery. We'll save those first 6 weeks. Now, that might be benevolent in some sense, but it's also, that should be your decision. Where I really believe knowledge is power, and looking at, where that microfracture in 2008 left you in 2021, all those years, I'm sure if you had an open, honest conversation about where you're at that time, you would want to have taken a different route, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we really try to give people is an understanding of, what a big deal this injury is the first time you have it, so that it doesn't become a multi-injury, multi-surgery, years of struggle thing, because that is the reality of what being under rehabbed can do for people, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, I can let you get out of here on, I think, just last question. Yeah, what would you say for you was, just what you're doing now? I think you talked about it a little bit, but I want to let you kind of summarize of just like, you mentioned feeling like I don't think about my knee. What would you say is how you feel about your knee? What are your kind of specific results and kind of long term, just how you feel about having done this and the place it left you in for life?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, I don't really think about it too much, my knee anymore, which is, I mean, just a mental load off your shoulders, which is amazing. Um, but I mean, I think what I've been able to do in the last few months, like physically, for me is just like this is a huge testament to what we were able to accomplish. And I did Hyrox, which is, for those that don't know, almost 6 miles of running. There's 5 miles of running, plus a whole bunch of other things: lunges, squats, jumping, rowing, all this kind of stuff. And my knee felt great.
For
Like,
time.
yeah, like all for time. And it felt awesome. Like, I I was expecting fully that the next morning I'd, be hobbling a little bit when I first woke up, that it might ache a little bit. Nothing. Felt great. Awesome.
Yeah.
I just ran the Peachtree Road Race on July 4th, which is a 10K, and I haven't run a 10K in it's okay, baby. In probably ever. Okay, can you give me a few minutes, please? And I ran that and my knee felt great during it and it felt great after it. And so being able to do these big fitness things that I've never done before. You don't want me to talk anymore? um okay, give me a few minutes. And be able to do those after my fourth surgery. It's just like, I mean, that's a huge accomplishment and it's okay. Um, and yeah, I think it's left me in a really good spot. I told you before, like I had a flare up of my knee that was entirely of my own doing, but that happened in early June. And once I started incorporating these movements, like once I started, no, sir. Once I started incorporating the movements that I kind of took note of from you, my knee felt great, and I was able to run a month later 6 miles. So,
Yeah,
I not only have, I think, the base of strength that I need to do what I need to do, but I also have the tools for inevitably after 4 knee surgeries, flare-ups are going to happen. It would be naive of me to think they're not. But when they do happen, I also have the tools now to work on it and get it in a better spot so I can continue to do the things I need. And it doesn't mean that I have to stop doing everything. It just means I have to be more mindful and a little bit more strategic about what I'm doing. But it allows me to do everything I want. So um,
yeah.
I get to run around with this crazy one.
That is beautifully said. That is exactly what I wanted for you, and I'm super proud of how far you've come and how you've continued to use that knowledge because I know it's not easy to
Mhm.
keep that in check.
Yeah.
You've done an amazing job, and I appreciate it. And I can let you go, buddy. Do you think your mom is strong?
Hey, am I strong? You want to tell him? Do you think I'm strong? Am I fit? Yeah.
Does
Okay.
mom lift more than all the other moms?
Am I stronger than all the other moms? Seems shy. You being goofy.
Yeah. I can. Oh,
The chaos. Are you
um,
excited for the toddler years?
yes, yeah. I'm getting there. We just had our first flight with our son at 9 months, compared to when he was 3 months, and it was a whole different
A
animal.
whole
So
different world, yeah. It's fun though. None
yeah,
of it's bad. It's just different.
no, for sure, for sure. We're looking forward to it, and I appreciate you so much for making time for this twice, especially with 2 kids and the first time not working. So thank you so much for joining us.
Of course.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate it and the example you are for all the ACLers who have more complex situations and multiple surgeries, and for all the moms out there too, because I think it really is a great example. So I'm glad you touched on it, and I appreciate it. And I'll let you go and be with your family. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, talk to you soon, Allison.
Bye.